Her name was Matilda, as was fitting for a woman of noble birth. She was wild, she was carefree. I kind of like to think that she must have had brothers and that she was one of those girls who could climb trees, because later on in this story we find that actually she's a dab hand with a quarterstaff. Her father, being a noble, had a husband in mind for her, a political marriage, an arranged marriage, perhaps you might say a forced marriage. And being a feisty maiden, she rebelled against this, because of course Matilda had a true love, but her true love was a yeoman, a free man, but a man with no title and no land, and a man who had been outlawed, and who lived in Sherwood Forest with his band of merry men, and would of course be a most unsuitable match for a noble born woman. So Matilda found some boy's clothes. She cut her hair short and set off into the forest in search of Robin. And she must have been carrying a quarterstaff with her. Perhaps she was also carrying a bow and a quiver full of arrows, and she set off. And as she was walking through the path, through the wood, a stranger came the other way. And as it was a narrow path, and as now they would give way, the two of them fell to fighting. And Matilda, although she was a girl, and although probably shorter than her adversary, for of course we know that he was a tall man, he found himself flat on the back, staring up at the sky, with a young boy dressed as a page standing over him, holding a quarterstaff. And it was then that he pulled off his hood, and it was then that Matilda pulled off her hat, and it was then that the two of them laughed, we suppose. Because after all, they were young and in love. And that is the strange story of how a noble's daughter came to be the wife of a notorious outlaw. And of course she changed her name to Marian, and of course she is known as Maid Marian. And if you go to Edwinstowe, you can find the church where it is said that Robin Hood married Maid Marian. And so she became the only woman to live with the outlaws, deep in the forest. The story, of course, of a maid disguising herself as a boy, of course, that turns up all over the place. That's a well trodden path in the kind of in the folk tradition. Marian appears in the traditional Robin Hood stories quite late. She's apparently mentioned in 2 plays by 1600. Now, to put that in context, Elizabeth I died 1603. So what that says is she had appeared in two plays during Tudor times, but she doesn't appear in any of the very old stories. In the old stories, it's very definitely men. Yeah. Quite why a sort of female figure was kind of introduced into the narrative then. It's a bit difficult to say, perhaps because by then we'd had shock horror 2 female monarchs. Of course, Mary I, the first woman ever to rule England, and then her half sister, Elizabeth I. Marian is generally taken as being a reference to not to Queen Mary, but to Mary, the Blessed Virgin, Mother of Christ, who, of course, modern pagans tend to take as an aspect of the goddess. So, if you like to put a kind of neo-pagan twist on the Robin Hood legend, which a lot of people do, and Angus Donald did in his first Robin Hood story, then yeah, you can kind of use that as sort of a little bit more evidence of that, if it suits you. But certainly, Maid Marian, when she first appears in the ballads, she's she's tough. She can fight Robin, and she can win. There we are. Great, great role model. She's not a woman who sort of gets rescued, particularly. I think I quite like her, actually. That, I'm not quite sure, where she appeared from, but of course, when it says the Maid Marian figure had appeared in 2 plays by 1600, of course, at that time all actors, all players were male, so she would have been played by a boy actor anyway. So, make of the role of Maid Marian whatever you will, really. But I rather like her as this very tough, sort of a little bit of a tomboyish character, which is why I think she must have had brothers that she kind of wrestled with as she was growing up. Yeah, strong woman. So maybe she could only have appeared from a time when we'd had 2 very strong women reigning over this green and pleasant land. Hope to see you again soon.